President Donald Trump has recently announced the complete withdrawal of the American troops from Afghanistan within Christmas this year. For us, as the ordinary people of Afghanistan who have yet paid the highest price for these political games, this decision seems to be the repetition of the same mistake that the United States government has made in late 80s. After the withdrawal of the Soviet troops from Afghanistan. The United States and its allies then, who backed the Mujahideen insurgents in the fight against communism, also pulled back without a plan for establishment of a functioning government and a clear plan for a sustainable peace. After 12 years of chaos and civil war in Afghanistan, Afghanistan turned to a safe haven for global terrorism, who killed thousands of Afghans and also carried out deadly attacks on US soil and killed thousands of American citizens, and also led to the longest and most expensive war for the American government overseas. It seems like the US politicians haven't learned anything special from that mistake. Let me clarify before we go further that it's crystal clear that every peace-loving citizen of Afghanistan wants the foreign troops out of their homelands, but not in any cost. Not in the cost of losing the great achievement that they have attained since the collapse of the Taliban regime in 2001, such as freedom of expression, human rights, and freedom of women. Now we, as the ordinary people of Afghanistan, demand the President of the United States, the presidents and the prime ministers of EU countries, and of course the Secretary General of NATO, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, to reconsider their politics and not to put the fate of millions of people, a nation, I mean the fate of the people of Afghanistan, at stake in these political games. Please respect those hundreds of thousands of Afghan lives who have been lost, and thousands of men and women in the American army and also in NATO who gave their lives in the battle against terror. And of course, billions of dollars which were spent to accomplish the Operation Enduring Freedom and to build a democratic state which is accountable and which is in favor of all people from all walks of life. We, as the people of Afghanistan who have paid an unimaginable high price for what the politicians call geopolitical interests, concerned profoundly about our future. Afghanistan is unfortunately one of those countries on planet that have experienced a tremendous amount of violence, atrocities, bigotry, and hatred. This country has a long, dark, terrifying, and traumatic history of war, genocides, massacres, and of course forced mass migrations, where millions of people have lost their homes, their lands, and more importantly, their loved ones and members of their families. Tens of thousands of others, including women and children, have lost even parts of their bodies, have been disabled, and live in a very harsh and bitter life, in a limbo situation between life and death, without having access to any kinds of welfare goods. Well, that is not surprising, because there is no and have never been a welfare system in that country that can cover those in need and heal even parts of their painful wounds. Because during these 4 decades of constantly war and conflicts, nobody has fought for for justice and for social welfare and for prosperity. Nobody fought for the good of people. Everyone who took a machine gun killed only for the sake of God and for the good of Islam. Today there are millions of Afghan citizens fleeing terror, insecurity, and risking their lives to find a safe corner to survive. By some clicks on the internet, you can easily find a massive volume of data regarding the Afghan immigrants who live under a very inhumane and horrible situation in those so-called refugee camps, which are in fact horrendous detention centers in various countries such as Greece, Indonesia, Turkey, Pakistan, Iran, Serbia, France, and many other countries. This was a very brief introduction and plain English of only highlights of the actual situation of the Afghan people to think about when we talk about the so-called intra-Afghan, the ongoing intra-Afghan peace negotiations between the Afghan government and the insurgent group of Taliban. In 19 years of attempt to reconstruction and establishment of democracy and internalizing of democratic ideals in Afghanistan, despite all major challenges such as frequent conflicts and terror attacks that carried out predominantly by the Taliban and also by ISIS and other groups, despite losing tens of thousands of security forces and innocent people in this period, we have also reached great achievements too. We have clearly failed in many areas. We have failed in the fight against corruption. We have failed in the fight against the production of opium. Extreme poverty, unemployment, and insecurity is increasing. Despite all these breakdowns, we have also obtained great achievements too, such as the freedom of expressions and relatively respect for the human rights, improving of literacy rate and for both girls and boys, and enhancement of the overall situation for women. We think that by a hastily and irresponsible withdrawal of the international troops from Afghanistan and leaving Afghanistan alone in the hands of Taliban and those fundamentalist forces within the Afghan government, the bitter history will be repeated.